Not too long ago, I made a video on this chilling illustration from the Book of Bill. One that presents an army of parallel pines plotting their revenge on the Dipper and Mabel we've come to know and love. Bill's Cipher reveals that there's only one timeline where Dipper and Mabel survived the events of the summer. In all the other timelines, they either ended up 6 feet under or became the worst versions of themselves. In that original video, I mainly focused on the idea of all these variants coming together and fighting to the death to decide who gets to take prime Dipper and Mabel's place in the multiverse. But now that a high quality version of this spread is out there, and the fan base has had time to speculate, I want to dive deep into every single one of these variants, running through every timeline where Dipper and Mabel died. Or at least lost to the villain of the week. How did Bill end up striking a deal with Mabel? Why did Dipper join the Society of the Blind Eye? What about the universes that aren't depicted here? I'm going to give you all the answers you've been looking for, so let's get started. After I quickly plug our new compilation channel, Roundtable Rewind, presenting a bunch of Roundtable videos old and new, re-edited into themed compilations. The first one on Gravity Falls has been performing very well, so thank you all for that. And we got more on the horizon, such as Steven Universe and Adventure Time comps, so be sure to subscribe. And if you want to help us commission more dope art, like this awesome thumbnail by the talented Jakey Bones, or this new overlay by the amazing Hats Off Media, then consider supporting us over on patreon.com/roundtablevids. You get sneak peeks, and your name featured at the end of videos. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now let's dive in. Let's take it from the top, and start with Gnome Queen Mabel. A timeline where Dipper and Mabel didn't even make it past their first big adventure without things going south. I imagine that the major change in this universe was Mabel complying with the gnomes and becoming their queen. We can even kind of see one of them lifting her up here. While this already isn't an ideal situation for Mabel, I think things took a darker turn from here. Dipper obviously wouldn't be cool with Mabel getting abducted and forced into becoming royalty. He tried to save her and failed spectacularly. Keep in mind, Mabel giving in probably means she never discovered that they're vulnerable to leaf blowers, and the twins would be unaware that the gnomes could be tamed by a dog whistle. So Dipper has no surefire way of defeating them. Even if he pulled up with the whole Mystery Shack crew, they'd be vastly outnumbered. They'd get crushed, literally. Dipper would have been killed by the gnomes, and any surviving members of his rescue party would become their human slaves, separated from the town as they're hidden deep in the woods. Bitter, heartbroken, and desperate to escape gnome kind, Gnome Queen Mabel has a far-fetched wish to seek out another universe where she and her brother could have defeated the gnomes and enjoy a peaceful summer. Little does she know that summer would have been anything but peaceful. Now keep in mind, Dipper dying at any point before the end of Gideon Rises means that Stan never comes into possession of Journal 3, and thus he's never able to make the portal operational, stranding Ford in the Nightmare Realm forever. Or it might leave Stan vulnerable to Bill's manipulation, as he's more desperate than before to fix the portal. But I don't think even the most dire circumstances would stop Stan from recognizing a fellow con artist. No shot he ever shakes Bill's hand unless it's to trick the demon himself. Next up is Blind Eye Dipper. As likely as it is that this Dipper is from a timeline where McGucket didn't save him from getting zapped by Blind Ivan, not only did it seem like the society just wanted to mind wipe them and throw them off their tracks rather than indoctrinate them, I also think there's room for a more compelling story. One where Dipper chooses to don the red robe. Dipper is a character who craves knowledge. He has a strong desire to learn everything there is to know about the world around him. It's why Bill is such a compelling villain for the show, because he has all the answers. He knows he can exploit Dipper's curiosity for his own benefit. For Dipper to sacrifice knowledge, he would have to be at his lowest point, where he's pushed past his limits and feels like he's seen far too much, hence covering his eyes with the hood. Not only does that embody the sentiment that ignorance is bliss, but it also sells a certain expression. Blind Eye Dipper looks very ashamed of himself. That drove him to start wiping the minds of Gravity Falls, himself included. So what exactly am I getting at? Well, I was thinking if Dipper's gonna fold and join the Blind Eye, then he needs to be in a terrible state of mind prior to the events of this episode. Something that would leave him racked with guilt. This is a timeline where one bad move derailed his entire summer. And coming through the series, I think I know where there could have been a divergence point that led to everything everything in Dipper's life falling apart. Into the bunker. That episode had so many close calls for the Mystery Shack crew, but there's only one moment where someone's life falls directly into Dipper's hands. And that's when the shapeshifter is fighting with Wendy. Dipper desperately tries to decipher which Wendy is the real deal. And although he ends up striking the shapeshifter in the timeline we're familiar with, what if in another reality he swung at the wrong Wendy? What if Dipper killed Wendy? What if he crossed paths with the blind eye, obtained a memory gun, and wiped his mind of anything Wendy? What if he wiped the whole town's memory of Wendy? What if the corduroys have no clue that there's a fourth kid missing from their family? Okay, that might be a bit much. But I do think something catastrophic like Wendy dying would lead Dipper to the blind eye. The gang is able to cover up the details so Dipper doesn't get in prison for murder, but Dipper feels guilty all the same. No words can change that. He feels incapable of redemption or salvation, feeling as if Wendy died because of his own selfishness. His pursuit for knowledge led directly to the demise of his friend, someone he cares for deeply, so he throws all of it away. While grieving, he's approached by one of the blind eye members and is sent down a dark path, helping keep the supernatural secrets of the town hidden from the masses so no one ever ends up in his position. Not to mention, if someone finds out that he's responsible for Wendy's death, he has to ensure that the truth stays a secret. Driven to the point of insanity, Blind Eye Dipper dreams of a reality where everything can go back to normal. Now I can see Blind Eye Mabel being the result of two scenarios: Dipper dying at any point prior to the events of the Society of the Blind Eye, or Blind Ivan giving her a very interesting proposition. If something happened to Dipper, the entire town would be in mourning. He and Mabel made a name for themselves in Gravity Falls pretty quickly, so there'd be more eyes on Mabel than ever before, as everyone's worried about her, on top of her being sent back home sooner than later. While she's still in town, the Society of the Blind Eye would offer Mabel a chance to wipe her memory of brothers. But she knows that the Mystery Shack crew in particular wouldn't just move on from Dipper, they talk about him all the time. So she wipes everyone's memory of brothers, ensuring Dipper never comes up in conversation again. But Wendy forgets who her brothers are, creating a rather confusing situation for her at home. And if Stan forgot everything he knew about brothers, he'd forget about Ford, never finishing the portal and leaving Ford stranded in the Nightmare Realm. Alternatively, maybe Blind Ivan has a lucky guess and pieces together that Dipper and Mabel's parents might be getting a divorce, getting Mabel to join the Blind Eye with the goal of reuniting with her parents, so she can blast the idea of a divorce right out of their memory, hoping the Blind Eye keep the masses in blissful ignorance until that day arrives. Wax statue Dipper is a bit trickier to figure out because, as far as we know, the wax statues were cursed, but they couldn't pass that curse along to human beings and turn them into statues. Who knows though? Maybe that was something they had up their sleeve, a hidden power reserved as a last-ditch effort to curse other people, defeating Dipper and Mabel during their big battle and turning them into wax statues, melting the twins shortly after, forcing them to experience the same death they dealt onto the replicas. This wax Dipper could just represent Dipper getting killed by the wax statues and isn't meant to be literal, and ultimately it probably was just cool for the whole piece. But I don't like settling for boring answers. That's not what we do here. 16-bit Dipper might be a fate worse than death, as it implies that he'll spend the rest of his days getting beaten over and over in Fight Fighters. Because let's be real, who's going to be a Dipper main? He's been nerfed to hell and back. So I'm thinking if there's a hidden code to bring Rumble Skirmish into the real world, then maybe there's a code that can bring a real human being into the game, which happened to this Dipper, trapping him inside the arcade cabinet, and bringing the events of Fight Fighters to a screeching halt. Alternatively, Giffany did plan to download Zeus's brain into Romance Academy 7, so perhaps something similar happened to Dipper here. Or it's possible that in another timeline, the events of Fight Fighters unfolded mostly the same until Rumble hit Dipper with a different finishing move. One that didn't just fuck Dipper up, but actually put him in the grave. And since he was slain by a video game character, his soul respawned through a 16-bit iteration in the game. Now this Dipper is left with nothing but bitter emotion, waiting for someone to put in the cheat code that can set him free. Let's knock out two birds with one stone and tackle Shears Dipper and Amulet Mabel, as their variants that hail from the same episode. Sheer Zipper is pretty straightforward. Mabel isn't able to save him from Gideon in time during the events of the Hand of the Rocks to Mabel, and as a result, Dipper gets stabbed in the back by shears, leaving Mabel all alone. Mabel gets sent right back home. Stan has a falling out with Dipper and Mabel's parents at the very least. Gideon wins, eventually attains journal number 3, and ends up taking over the town, as the twins are no longer there to stop him. Amulet Mabel is a much more interesting story. You could get a lot of angsty fanfics out of this setup. Amulet Mabel is a Mabel who fails to save Dipper and Gideon with Gideon's amulet, causing the two to plummet to their death. Overwhelmed with guilt and struggling to cope with her brother's demise, Mabel keeps the amulet and runs away into the woods, mastering her newfound magical ability to dive deep into the supernatural weirdness of Gravity Falls, hoping to find a way to bring her brother back to life, or find a reality where he's still alive. Mabel with a dash of Raven or Scarlet Witch. You dig the vision? Imagine the rabbit hole that could send Mabel down, learning about Bill's Cipher and the Zodiac, trying to prevent Wormageddon from happening, as she knows that if her brother's dead, then the prophecy is impossible to fulfill, and all the while she's haunted by the ghost of Gideon. Like, his actual ghost. You know his ass ain't gonna rest easy. Next we have a variant that I overlooked in my original video, Dipper clone number 2. Better known as Tyrone, the clone that Dipper arguably got the closest to, even if natural selection played a big part in that. However, I don't think this is Tyrone in the illustration. I actually think that this is this universe's Dipper. Yeah, play the dramatic music, this is kinda crazy. Tyrone originally was the last clone standing in Double Dipper, aside from Dipper clones 3 and 4, who ran off into the woods. Well, actually according to Journal 3 lore, they came back to the party, hid in Dipper's closet, and then ran into the woods after they were busted. What if instead of calling a truce, Tyrone in this timeline pulled an old switcheroo, imprisoning Dipper while he assumes his life, forcing Dipper into the role of clone number 2. Maybe clones 3 and 4 are keeping watch of this Dipper in the woods. Either way, he's not happy having his precious summer memories stolen from him. Of course, there's also the possibility that Tyrone took over his life and just murdered him. Tyrone spending his days avoiding liquids at all costs. Submarine Dipper is a variant where my thoughts haven't really changed all too much. This is a timeline where Dipper, Mabel, and the gang all got eaten by the submarine trickster like Gordy, but they weren't freed in time to escape digestion. Or, if the submarine trickster doesn't digest people, they could just be slowly rotting inside his body, surviving off candy but having no water to keep themselves hydrated. I guess you could say it's a rather sweet death. Oh, brother! Well, I thought it was funny. No, I didn't. Right below Summerwing Dipper, we have a Mabel variant that I wasn't able to identify in my original video, but now I know for a fact is likely a Mabel who died or lost her Dipper during the events of the Legend of the Gobblewonker, their second summer adventure. Revisiting this episode, odds are the twins were killed during the Gobblewonker chase. Like, it really is luck that anyone would survive a crash like this. The power of the Toon Force was absolutely on their side here, but clearly it wasn't in every universe. Since McGucket was the one piloting this mechanical beast, odds are he'd be sent to prison for not only the Gobblewonker, but causing the deaths of Dipper, Mabel, and Seuss. And if McGucket goes to jail, the Society of the Blind Eye is never defeated, Ford may never come out of the portal, and the two never have their reconciliation. Which means this is probably a timeline where Gideon or Bill wins. Man, this is a dark video, huh? Zombie Mabel and Zombie Dipper are two more straightforward stories. They're just really heartbreaking. It's become a pretty popular idea that these undead twins are a result of Stan failing to save them in Karaoke, and I completely agree. Mostly because it would be a huge gut punch. Not only would Stan carry immense guilt for losing more family members in a situation where he feels as if he wasn't fast enough, but Dipper's final moments would have been the lad blaming himself for getting everyone wrapped up in his quest for answers.
I wanted answers so bad I put everyone in danger. Now we're toast, it's all my fault, and no one can save us!
This would also mean that the invisible ink in the journals was likely never discovered, so no one would have learned that a 3-part harmony is the key to defeating the zombies, and no one would have discovered the cure to reversing zombification. Odds are the entire town became zombies, either leading to a worldwide apocalypse, or Gravity Falls getting blown up to smithereens by the government, neutralizing the zombie outbreak before it gets too out of control. Wow, again, this is not a happy video. Let's try to lighten the mood with Smile Dip Mabel. I mean, I don't really have anything to add from the first time I talked about this. Mabel got lost in the Smile Dip sauce, and she never came down from that high. If she didn't die from a sugar-induced overdose, then she might just be tripping for the rest of the summer, her warped perception of reality leaving her prone to danger. Bill doesn't even need to make Mabel land anymore. Time displaced Dipper is an interesting one, because he could be a result of either the time traveler's pig or Blendon's game. Maybe this Dipper and Mabel got killed while slingshotting themselves through time, or maybe the tape ended up malfunctioning during one of their time travel adventures, and Dipper's trapped in this purgatory-like state, unable to stabilize himself in this reality. Now things really get weird, as we shed light on a fan favorite, Bipper, and by proxy, Dipper's lost soul. We can safely assume this is a timeline that branches off from the events of sock opera, but after being duped by Bill's Cipher, Dipper is never able to recover his body. While it's completely possible that there's a world out there where Mabel failed to stop Bill, and the Dream Demon kept Dipper's body for the long haul, leaving Dipper as a lost soul for the rest of his days, we can't ignore the morbid alternative provided in Journal 3, where Bill planned to jump off the water tower in Dipper's body, killing Dipper in the process. And since Bill can possess corpses, who's to say he couldn't get some more mileage out of Pine Tree? But I think there's a third path worth tossing out there. What if Bill lured Dipper into a dynamic that's identical to the one he had with Ford, where he's able to move in and out of Dipper's body whenever he pleases, striking this deal around the events of sock opera like before, so he just has to string Dipper along for a couple of weeks as Stan is on the verge of restarting the portal. By the time Ford meets Dipper, it's already too late. Bill's 2 steps ahead, and as soon as Ford shows Dipper that rift, it's Weirdmageddon time. Bipper and Ford aren't the only Bill-possessed Pines out there in the multiverse, as we evidently have a universe where Mabel, or Babel, exists. Bill learned from trying to infiltrate Mabel's mind that she was desperate to make summer last forever, so perhaps there was a timeline where he reached out to her without possessing Blendon, tricking her into making a deal so he can take control of her body and destroy the rift. Maybe Bill ensnares Mabel in an illusion like he did with Dipper, making it seem like the laptop was counting down, when in reality, nothing was happening to it whatsoever. What if he leads Mabel to believe that Dipper is on death's door, on the verge of passing in his sleep, forcing Mabel to strike a deal with him, as she believes it's the only way to ensure that Dipper is saved as fast as possible, only for Mabel to discover that Dipper's actually fine, but it's far too late. Bill's already in control of her body. Maybe Bill strikes a deal with Mabel around the events of sock opera instead of Dipper, still deceiving Mabel by asking for a puppet, making his move once the portal restarts, given how instrumental Mabel was to that moment. It makes the most sense to me, given that sock opera was what cemented Bill as a huge threat in the eyes of Dipper and Mabel. But who knows? Maybe there's another moment that's perfect for Cipher to swoop in. Feel free to spitball in the comments. Northwest Dipper is another one where we can be quick to the point. Pacifica never committed to her change of heart and never opened the gates of the Northwest Mansion. Instead, she let the fear of her parents outweigh all sense of reason, keeping everyone at the party petrified, and odds are, she dies in that mansion with her parents. A lack of action can have consequences too. Tiny Dipper and Mabel. Gideon shrank them and they were never able to return back to normal. Pretty easy. Maybe they ended up getting stopped and killed while they were tiny. Maybe they ended up turning the tables on Gideon and killed him, but they're still the size of Smurfs. Either way, they look deranged. We have a hand that has to be Dipper or Mabel encased in amber or tree sap, meaning they lost big time during the events of The Land Before Swine. An episode that revealed Gravity Falls is secretly home to a ton of dinosaurs who are frozen in suspended animation. The tree sap keeping them in this state has begun to melt and is slowly freeing all the dinos. I just think the twins weren't lucky in this timeline and ended up getting trapped in some of this sap, but considering they're a fraction of the size of these dinosaurs, I imagine they'd either be preserved in this amber or are presumed to be dead. But hey, President Tremblay survived being encased in peanut brittle, so running with that logic, they should be fine. But I imagine if only one twin got trapped, then the other became fixated on saving them, which runs its own risk, and that could motivate them to find a universe where they're alive and well. It's unsettling to think of a timeline where Dipper or Mabel are like full-blown adults, and they're still trying to rescue their 12-year-old sibling from suspended animation, desperate to return to their childhood. I'm gonna derail for a second and run through some of the undocumented universes that aren't pictured in this spread, but more than likely exist if we're taking Bill's claim seriously. Hunting around! There's definitely a timeline where the twins don't survive the car crash and not what he seems. Dipper and Ford could have been killed by the Impossibeast, losing the game in Dungeons, and more dungeons. There's a timeline where Stan fails to save the twins, and they're blown up by Gideon in the Stanchurian Candidate. There's probably a timeline where Mabel and her friends are killed by the unicorns in the last Mabelcorn, losing the brawl. The kids feel Bill to save Stan and get killed by Darlene in Roadside Attraction. Love hurts. Dipper touches the adhesive and has all of his orifices sewed up, or he gets killed during the prison droid chase in Dipper and Mabel vs. the Future. And finally, Dipper gets killed in the Mad Max-esque car chase during Weirdmageddon. Yeah, sorry this video was a bummer, but I'm having fun. Last but not least, we have Petrified Dipper and Mabel, which I originally speculated could have happened at any point during Weirdmageddon, but a more popular idea is that it happened during the climax of the episode, right before Stan and Ford tricked Bill, the moment Bill captures Dipper and Mabel and threatens to kill one of them.
Eeny, meeny, miny, you!
What if the you and the eeny meeny miny you was actually both of the twins? Bill giving Ford the finger for turning him down by transforming his niece and nephews into statues. Perhaps this would have broken Ford, and he finally caves, only for Bill to destroy the statues instead of turning Dipper and Mabel back to normal. And there you have it, every timeline where Dipper and Mabel either lost a battle or their lives. Do you agree with these scenarios, or do you envision something a little different? Let us know in the comments down below, and keep the conversation going over on Instagram and Twitter at OstricFox and at Roundtable Vids. Shout out to Janky Bones for another bigger thumbnail. Give them a follow on Twitter at JankyBone and check out their store. Links to everything in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please throw it a like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great Gravity Falls content. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day. Peace!